Have you ever been in this situation before? You see someone, you want to speak English, you want to start a conversation, but your brain just suddenly goes blank. And you start thinking, what do I say? Are they going to understand me? What words do I use? Is my English good enough? What if it sounds weird or awkward? So instead of speaking, you just stay quiet. Starting a conversation in English can feel difficult, but the truth is it doesn't have to be complicated. In this video today, I'm going to show you simple and natural ways to start a conversation in English, even if you're shy or nervous. Let's get started. Hello everybody, I'm Rita. Thank you guys for joining me. Today I want to teach you how to start a conversation. Maybe you feel nervous, maybe you feel unsure of yourself or even a little scared. You want to say the right thing, but you just don't know how to start. I'm going to help you find the words to say naturally. Let's go. So our first step is we are going to start with a simple greeting. This is our step one. Start with a simple greeting. The easiest way to start a conversation is with a simple greeting. You don't need anything complicated. So here are some natural greetings that us as native speakers, we use every day. Hi, hello, hey, how's it going? How are you? So for example, you might say, hi, how's it going? Or, hey, how are you? And you can mix these different ones and use them in the same sentence. So it doesn't, you don't always have to say, hi, how's it going? You could also say, hey, how's it going? Or instead of say, hey, how are you? You could say, hi, how are you? So there's many different ways to mix these. And if you can use these, you're off to a great start. These are very normal and friendly ways to begin a conversation. Most of the time, the other person will respond with something like, I'm good, thanks, or pretty good, not bad. And so now our conversation has begun. You have started the conversation and the other person has responded. So let's go to step two. Step two is we are going to ask a simple question. So after greeting someone, the next step is to ask a simple question. Questions keep conversations moving. So remember, you can't just say, hi, how are you? And then stop the conversation. You want to keep going with the conversation. So here are some easy questions you can use. Where are you from? What do you do? Is this your first time here? How long have you lived here? So for example, you could say, hi, how's it going? Where are you from? Or, hey, is this your first time here? Simple questions make conversations feel natural. And remember, people usually enjoy talking about themselves. All right, now that we've got step one and step two, we're going to go to step three. Step three, use the situation around you. So another great way to start a conversation is by talking about the situation that you're in. So this works especially well with people you don't know. So for example, if you're at a cafe, you might say, have you tried the coffee here? That is a simple question that you could ask somebody to start a conversation. Have you tried the coffee here? If you're at an event, for example, you could say, is this your first time at this event? Or if you're in a classroom, you could ask, what do you think of the class so far? Talking about the situation feels natural because both of you are experiencing the same thing. So you're going to ask, the other person's going to answer, and both of you can converse about the situation that you are both in at that exact time. Step four, give a simple comment. So you don't always have to ask a question. Sometimes you can start a conversation just with a simple comment. For example, this place is really busy today. Or the weather is really nice today. Or maybe you could say, this line is taking forever. And often the other person will respond and add something to the conversation. For example, yeah, it's always busy here. And so now the conversation is starting naturally. All right, let's go to step 5. You're going to show interest in the other person. Good conversations happen when you show interest in the other person. You can do this with small reactions like, really? That's interesting. No way. That's cool. For example, if somebody says, I'm from Brazil, you can respond, oh, really? That's so cool. I've always wanted to visit Brazil. So this makes the conversation feel friendly and natural. All right, let's go to step 6. We're going to ask follow-up questions. One of the biggest mistakes people make is asking just one question, and then the conversation stops because you don't know how to continue. The secret here is to follow up on the conversation. You're going to follow up with questions. For example, if a person says, I'm from Italy, you could ask, oh, nice, what part of Italy? So then they answer, and then you could ask again, how long have you lived there? And so now the conversation keeps going, and your follow-up questions show that you are interested in that person. Step number 7, don't worry about perfect English. I am so passionate about this because as I teach people to learn the English language, this is the one thing that I am most passionate about, because people want to be perfect. And I understand that they want to say the perfect things because they want the other person to understand them. But I always tell my students, don't worry about perfect English, because many people are afraid to start conversations because they think their English isn't perfect. But the truth is, most native speakers, we do not expect perfect English. We just want to be able to understand you. And so don't worry about making mistakes, even simple English words. Okay, now that we've learned some steps, I'm going to do an example conversation, and so you can see how the conversation is going to flow. So I'm not just going to say, hi, how's it going? And then the other person says, fine. And then the conversation stops. So I'm going to give you an example of how to keep going with the conversation naturally in English. Okay, so let's use the person A and person B, for example. Person A says, hi, how's it going? Person B responds, pretty good, how about you? Person A responds, I'm good, where are you from? Person B says, I'm from Mexico. Person A responds, oh, nice. How long have you been here? This is a very natural conversation, nothing complicated, and we are using simple questions and we're expressing interest in the other person. Here's a final tip. If you want to get better at starting conversations, practice in smaller situations first. For example, talk to somebody at a cafe, or talk to somebody in a class, or talk to somebody at your work. Because the more that you practice, the easier it becomes, and then you can go into bigger groups. Confidence grows with practice, and that's why I always tell my students, practice, 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 because that is the way that you're going to get better. So remember, these simple steps to start a conversation in English are the following. Start with a greeting, ask a simple question, talk about the situation, make a comment, show interest, and ask follow-up questions. You don't need perfect English to start a conversation. You just need the courage to say hello. Now I want to ask you a question. What do you usually say when you start a conversation in English? You can comment below in the comments, and if you want to improve your English every week, don't forget to subscribe. I'm posting videos 3 times a week to give you the best English classes at home. Remember, don't worry about being perfect. Just learn how to keep the conversation going so you don't stop after the first question.